So I thought it might be useful to put on an initiative, although I recognise quite a few of you in the audience here today and also online. I'm sure we've got old friends and members represented. Just to give you a recap of our vision, we're a not-for-profit member-based organisation, a growing member-based organisation with 80 members. Our unique selling point, I think, in terms of our offer to the industry is that we work in collaboration to make sure that we are the leading provider of knowledge aimed at improving performance in the UK's built environment and construction sectors. And we always strive for continuous improvement in delivering independent and authoritative guidance, as well as high quality training courses and webinars, and now also bespoke online tools that we're launching today. And this just gives you a snapshot of our membership, from clients in the infrastructure sector to tier one constructors, major design consultancies who are represented here today, and also suppliers in a very long supply chain. So we're here today to hear a lot more about a tool that we've developed over the last couple of years. It was known as ciriabest, the best benefits estimation tool, and helping us to deliver this and get to this point. I'm really pleased with the work Dr. Louise Walker has done, our Senior Research Manager for Sustainable Water and Environmental Management at Ciria. She's worked on sustainability and water management and blue-green infrastructure for a long time. She was an environmental scientist and a chartered water and environmental manager, and she has over 20 years of experience working in this sector. And since completing her PhD on constructed wetlands, she's worked with a number of national and international projects focusing on surface water management, nature-based solutions, climate change resilience, innovation, and decision-making. So without further ado, I'd like to pass over to Louise.
Thanks very much, Dirk. Right, I'm just going to give a quick overview of ciriabest, why we developed the tool, the journey of its creation, and a bit about how to access it. I want to thank our funders in the development stages. We had a number of funders and a fantastic project steering group from across the industry. It gave us a lot of input into what was needed. So what is ciriabest? It's an evaluation tool developed over the last 10 years. It's relevant to many different types of nature-based solutions, but particularly those including blue infrastructure. It's applicable at multiple scales. It's focused on monetized benefits and based on extensive literature review, which has recently been updated. Each benefit category is underpinned by an impact pathway, and the tool supports both ecosystem services and multi-capital approaches, including natural capital. And then there's been strong stakeholder input into its development. The delivery team, Ciria, have worked closely with Stantec and for earlier versions, Eco Futures, with a lot of expert input into the philosophy around best, and particularly in thinking about some future scenarios. So why did we deliver it? We've identified an industry need, I guess, which is mostly what we do in Ciria when we produce guidance and support for good practice in whatever form. This has grown over the last 10 years. Obviously, there's been an increased focus not only on flood risk management, but on the receiving water quality environment, and public expectations of what receiving water quality should be like. And along with that has grown, I think, an awareness of the need to improve our blue and green infrastructure, in order to help us both mitigate the impacts of climate change, but to adapt to it as well, to help us to cope with extremes of temperature, to provide shade, to provide habitats. There's an ecological emergency going on at the same time as climate change. And that's led to different types of programs, different types of ways of evaluating these types of projects. And we are aware that other evaluation tools exist, as they say on the BBC. But we think ours is fairly unique. There are arguments for qualitative, quantitative methods and whether we should be monetizing nature, but it is monetized. That is the way that society operates. So in order to be able to make the business case for good blue-green infrastructure projects, we have to show the return on the investment. But that isn't necessarily just a financial return on what you've invested. It's benefits to society and the environment too, and over long periods of time sometimes. So ciriabest provides the potential to undertake a monetized approach in a structured manner, and that makes your projects comparable with other projects you undertake and with other people's projects when they use ciriabest. So just to give an overview of the journey and the work that's gone into development of the tool, we began in around 2012, interrogating the literature. We produced, I wasn't with Ciria then, but my predecessors began working with Stantec, who've been with us on the journey all the way through. And yeah, so we came up with values that can be monetized or quantified, and some that are more qualitative. They've been included in the tool in the most robust and sensible way in order to be able to evaluate projects. We've released a few different versions of the tool over the years and had feedback and improved it at each release. Version 5 in 2019 has had hundreds of downloads from across the world, actually. A common feedback of it was that it's very useful, but quite cumbersome to use. So we had the vision to take the tool online and make it even more of a guided process and even easier to use. And we were lucky enough at that point to secure some funding from Innovate UK to help us do that. And that really sped up the process of taking what was called BEST, it's now ciriabest, taking that online. So the earlier versions of the tool are spreadsheet based. There is a process of being guided through the evaluations. It just takes a bit of work, I guess, to understand what you're doing as you work through the spreadsheets. So throughout its development, we've also created associated infographics and case studies. There's case studies from the 2019 version available on the Susdrain website, and they show you some of the outputs for different projects. And then there's some more generic outputs shown here that show the benefits returning on investments in blue and green infrastructure in things like air quality and carbon sequestration, groundwater recharge. I won't read them all out, but probably the multiple benefits that you receive in addition to the main purpose of the blue and green infrastructure are over and above those of grey infrastructure generally. And then we've got an infographic there to show when to use best. So through Innovate UK support, as I said, we allowed a more rapid development of the tool in the online environment. There were a couple of hiccups during that that development, not through any fault of the team, just I think software stuff. But we came out with the benefits online, and we were able to further develop the tool after we had finished the Innovate UK project. So Ciria as an organisation is a not-for-profit organisation. We are going to be charging for the online tool, not because we want to make our millions out of it, but because to host the tool costs us money. We need to be able to keep it updated and reliable. We need to be able to do regular updates to make sure that the data is up to date and to make sure it remains usable and reliable, because we want this to be used by as many people as possible. Yeah, just to summarise, I guess, and Chris is going to talk more about the evaluation process, but without BEST, it's far more time-consuming, complex and non-standardised. And there are many potential. We're having a try before you buy period until the 26th of May. So if you search for ciria.best, you'll get to the tool, but you'll be asked to create a Ciria account. That just means it'll just take your details. It's not asking for any kind of payment or card information or anything like that, but it'll get you straight into the tool so you can see how useful it is. And we have a dedicated email address for feedback, problems, comments, which would be gratefully received. So thank you very much. I'm going to pass on to Chris. I must send apologies from Ian Tidrington from Welsh Government. He was going to come and talk to us about applying BEST to Greenwood Grangetown, which is fantastic blue-green installation in Cardiff, but he's held up by very important Welsh Government work, which yeah, he's under a lot of pressure at the minute. So but Chris has agreed to talk about one of an important project that you're part of as well. So thanks very much, Chris. I'll pass over to you.
Thanks, Louise. Good afternoon or kind of good evening, everyone. I'll just see if I can get rid of this top banner as well. Or not as the case, maybe just click on that, see if we can get it. No, well, we'll leave it anyway. So yes, I'm Chris Digman. I'm Vice Professor at University of Sheffield and Technical Director with Stantec, and I've had the pleasure of working with a number of colleagues from Stantec, as well as Louise mentioned, kind of eco futures in the journey in actually developing BEST over the last 10, 11 years, and it certainly has been a journey in that. But before we kind of get into the tool itself, and I'll then talk through just a little bit of an example as well. I'll just set the stage a little bit for it. And Louise already mentioned the fact that actually kind of a qualitative and quantitative and monetized approach. But what's been really important as we've been looking to develop BEST and actually enable kind of users to capture and actually record, for us to ensure that we can qualitatively kind of capture the reasons why, the evidence where things have actually come from. We have the quantitative values for us to enable us to actually determine the size of the benefit, and the monetary side, which actually allows us to actually say this is the value that's actually created. And what's always been quite fundamental in best is the fact that context is really, really important. And what we mean by that is whether the impact of retrofitting or kind of actually building any kind of blue-green infrastructure, nature-based solutions, the benefits that actually arise from that will really much depend upon actually what context is actually sitting in. Us planting 100 trees right next to more woodland will obviously have far less impact than planting 100 trees in the middle of an urban area, which is heavily kind of paved over. So context is really important, and that's always been an aspect that we've encouraged users to actually focus on. And that doesn't change whether we're in the old kind of Excel spreadsheet version, or now actually us having moved to a version which is actually online. And also the same aspects can actually follow through in terms of how we think around impact pathways. So we always encourage people to actually think about what are the interventions and the context that we're actually. So if we're looking to put rain gardens in a street, well then how will those interventions work? How will the planting of the soil work? What process will actually happen? To think of what will they actually change and what's the quantity or the quality that actually changes. So, for example, if we're going to say be installing rain gardens, it could be the amenity value that actually changes. And how much will it change? And so to think around, well, if we're going to plant one rain garden, and for those of you who are in the room, if you turned around and outside and planted one rain garden in the street outside, it's probably not going to change much. But if you're planting a number, it might start to actually change. And that's really important, coming back to that whole context piece. But if we understand the number, the tool can help us kind of actually guide through to actually work out what is the kind of size that we actually create. But we really think around those final outcomes. So the rain gardens could actually reduce the runoff, but they could also actually enhance the place. And by following through that and actually understanding then which benefits that might actually impact, we can then start to actually build up the whole kind of benefits case for schemes that we might be kind of actually proposing. And it's worth kind of actually remembering that there's an awful lot of evidence and information which is out there, and best looks to actually draw from that. And these are some of the more kind of actually recent ones which have actually come out, and many of the benefits that are actually in there also still actually align with what actually sits within best or ciriabest, I should say. So that's a really important part to ciriabest, is that we keep on looking to bring in up-to-date information and values. And to give it a little bit of a sense of scale for this, in the latest version, we've been updating quite a large number of the benefit categories again. So, for example, air quality and carbon sequestration, where we followed up kind of actually work undertaken by Forest Research and use their kind of actually numbers to kind of actually make it very now kind of actually specific to the actual UK. And that's really important that we carry on with that process to actually update, to make it kind of actually applicable. As best as maybe kind of developed actually further, then it also allows us to kind of actually regionalise where those impacts are. And I'll come back into that when we take the risk of demonstrating live the tool. But just a few kind of key things for us to just kind of actually highlight. For those who might be familiar with the Excel tool, what are some of those kind of differences? So firstly, the tool allows us to actually have a whole number of projects in the same place, allows us to copy those actually projects and see them spatially anywhere. And you have your project boundaries, and that actually allows you to actually do your actually benefits assessments. All the results are held within actually a dashboard which you can kind of actually download and actually pull the information off both from CSVs and PDFs. But it takes you for quite a nice simple step through for you to go and actually undertake that evaluation of benefits. And benefits, and this is a really big step, which the kind of moving to an online version actually allowed us to actually do, because we can define the boundary of where we're looking to assess benefits, but sometimes benefits might quite change over time because you might actually have a scheme that actually changes over time. So the tool has that flexibility to build up layers of benefits. So you have far more flexibility in actually undertaking an assessment kind of actually going forward, rather than maybe in the past where you might have undertaken an assessment which kind of went from 2025 to 2035. You then do another Excel version of the tool for 2035 to 2050 because you needed to change some of the benefits and the types of things that you're actually doing. So the flexibility that the tool now actually kind of creates is a really important step forward for us. Confidence is still an important key part of ciriabest. We always ask the user in kind of quartiles to estimate the confidence they have in the data and the values that they're actually using. Because, like with anything, how certain can we be around some of these things? And understanding what the benefit values are and where they come from, and the guidance that we have helps explain where that's come from. It's very open from that perspective. So you can choose the benefit values that kind of actually most align with your context, but you still might feel that they're not right. So that allows you to actually alter the confidence. So we're not suggesting we can over-egg the benefit values. And those confidence apply to both the quantitative numbers that we put in the tool and selecting the monetized values. The tool also allows you to share. So anyone actually signed up within ciriabest, you can actually share that project so multiple people can actually work on the same project. And it still has within there the importance kind of guidance, which kind of outlines where all the values have actually come from and actually how to undertake the assessment, and a how-to guide with some very kind of actually straightforward instructions to help you kind of get familiar quite quickly. Because probably like most of us, you don't tend to want to go look for a lengthy kind of a how-to guide, and you just want to go through some quick steps to try and actually kind of get a feel and a handle in terms of how something actually works. So we'll now move to the more risky part of the session, where I was told never work with live animals and children, but kind of actually doing live demonstrations is often quite a similar thing, I think. So we will kind of actually move through though, and hopefully go to this page here. So as Louise mentioned, if you and I might actually have to come off full screen actually. If you type in www.ciria.best, you will be taken to this page here. And you will see in the top right corner the login. So we will log in, and that should take you to the Ciria page like this, where if you're already a member, you might already have something actually signed up, but you need to sign in or register and actually go through the details. So that's a very straightforward process. So we'll click on sign in and hope everything is about to go live and actually work. So excellent. So on the landing page, you have a bit of an overview around ciriabest and a very simple kind of actually step through in terms of what to how to actually undertake the analysis. So you'll hope you've actually arrived at this screen here, and you'll see in the top right hand side you have the projects, the how-to guide, and the guidance on that. And so we'll just quickly kind of, as I mentioned, you have the how-to guide, and just some very simple drop downs which kind of actually talk you through what you actually need to do, right? Logging in, the home page, projects dashboard, and as said, if you kind of actually click on them, it talks you through some steps, and you can see a little bit of a GIF which actually runs in the background automatically, just kind of actually help cast your eye around with the mouse pointer to actually understand where you actually end up in that. So it's very kind of simple, and probably in about 5-10 minutes, you can be pretty much up to speed in terms of the kind of things that you need to press. So you can kind of get onto the real kind of enjoyable part of trying to actually evaluate a project. I did mention though, we have the guidance as well. And so this is now all online for those of you who might remember the old guidance, which was about probably 80, 90, 100 pages. So we've still got a lot of that actually content in there. Because as I said, it's really important that we're kind of transparent with the actual guidance and the information. And so you can just kind of quickly kind of flick through to wherever you want to do. Go, and kind of the way that I use it is I would typically kind of go, well, if I'm assessing amenity, I'll open this up at the same time, and I'll flick through to amenity, and I'll be looking at actually what's in the guidance while I'm actually doing my assessment as well. And if we go back to introduction, so but we'll move on to projects, and so what you can see on a screen here. This is my project library. I've got a number of projects created by myself and projects shared by Dan, who's in the audience today. Dan's been the kind of the real kind of clever person behind kind of making this happen. It'd still been Excel if I was actually kind of actually here and doing that. So and also Louise. So it's quite easy for us to actually share. And the buttons here kind of actually allow you to kind of green allows you to assess the benefits. The dot allows you to kind of focus in on an area. The red is the delete. Be careful when you think about pressing delete. You can copy. The orange is your dashboard, and the eye takes you to the project information. So what I'm just going to do, I'm just dive into kind of a project which we made up, so kind of actually we don't get any awkward questions around certain benefits and numbers and kind of get lost in a that world today and that. And we'll go to a place in Sheffield, which is Moor Valley. So we've already zoomed in around there. And so this is the project. And if you're going to create a new project, and I'll just cancel that a minute, you'd actually be looking to actually draw a polygon shape and actually start to fill in the details actually behind that. So we'll just kind of click on some of the project details over here. So you have an overview which you can say when your start and finish year is for your evaluation. That's always really important. That automatically populates all your benefits when you're doing it, but you can go and change it then. It just helps when you keep on, if you have to keep on writing 2023, it's just a little bit tedious, isn't it? You'll also notice we've got project and region, and that's particularly important because as we start to get more benefits come in, we want to be able to actually assign certain benefits to kind of certain region as well. So we're kind of very much kind of future proof in that aspect. The proposed value of your scheme, and you add in a little bit more kind of detail about it. The benefit screening, effective in terms of which benefits do you want to actually go and actually look at. We selected quite a large number here, and you get a little kind of summary in the box in terms of actually what those actually benefits are. We ticked all of them for this example just to kind of actually bring them all through into the dashboard. We have some user defined values, and more will probably actually come into here, but this allows your discount rate. Green Book is kind of typically 3.5%, except for air quality, which is 1.5%. Who knows what will actually happen with values in Green Book going forward? We're living in a slightly different world at the minute with inflation. But also you're able to share the project. So this is where you share, and you actually put in the email address of the user you're able to share, and that person can also then access that project. So I'm just going to cancel that, and we'll move to looking at the benefits briefly. So within this example here, I've just drawn two benefit boundaries. And again, it's quite easy. If we wanted to draw another one, we kind of click there and we would just kind of actually move around and actually draw that kind of benefit boundary in. And then we'd be able to start to fill in some information about that benefit boundary. And you're able to put benefit boundaries on top of benefit boundaries. So if you want to do that kind of staged evaluation, I said maybe 2023 to 2035, 2036 to 2055, allows you to actually do that. So that flexibility becomes really important. And if you look at a lot of schemes that we kind of actually build and probably build kind of going forward, they will be quite adaptive. If we're talking about blue-green infrastructure and nature-based solutions, those schemes may be ones that we deliver over a period of time. So actually having that kind of flexibility becomes really important. But also for to actually speed things up as well, we've also brought in the functionality that you can bring in shape files. So for example, you might be looking across quite a large area. You may be looking to actually do benefits and assessments. And those areas, and even if you look at this map here, at the moment, those three areas might be quite different. So you want to bring in those kind of benefit kind of areas rather than going for just doing one assessment across the whole boundary. So it does allow you to import files. And so if you kind of select file, and I've got some test ones hopefully in the right place here, and we just select those kind of shape files. We click open and we click import, and kind of hopefully we won't play spot the difference, but you'll have seen this kind of circle area now has actually come in. So trying to, and this will probably develop more in terms of having that kind of connectivity with more kind of other kind of geospatial tools that allows us to actually bring in information there. And it's quite simple to then go and actually delete as well. You can see I've just kind of highlighted the delete button. That disappears and we press save, and it's gone. So, but just to then actually kind of look at some benefits in a little bit more kind of actually detail. Here's one kind of actually benefit area. And because in that first section I've ticked all those benefit boxes, these benefits now actually appear in along the top here. So, for example, if we kind of went to amenity, you can see that you can enter in your own individual calculations. And that's quite important because you might have actually just done your own analysis and you want to actually bring that into this kind of formalized approach in that. Or you might be saying, well, actually, we've got a permanent body of water, therefore, I'm going to go in and I'm going to start to actually analyze and actually estimate the impact. So if I was to actually update this, so the estimated number of homes overlooking ponds, so let's say we've introduced a pond, if we use our imagination here and we go, well, there's 35 homes actually looking over there, then we'd go in and select the appropriate monetary value. And that's why the guidance is really important, because it actually helps you kind of select the right monetary value. So if we select that value, you then kind of put in the confidence. I'm 75% confidence on the number of properties. No, I'm not. I'm 100% confident because actually I know how many properties I've actually got. So I will change it to 100%, but I'm maybe 75% confident on the monetized value. So I can go and select that. And in this benefit here, you'll see on the left, we have the baseline option, which could be a do nothing, and the proposed option. So in here, we're leaving the baseline as it is because we're not actually touching it. But you might be doing some kind of comparison. So actually the tool actually allows that to actually happen. And as I scroll down, you'll actually see the monetized values which have actually appeared and the present value over that evaluation period before confidence and after confidence. And those numbers then kind of get translated all the way into the dashboard. And so you're able to do that for the different types of benefits. And so there's still, I think, about 19 main benefits. There's over 50 sub benefits within the tool, giving you and kind of guiding you through to the types of benefits that you might be wanting to actually look at from the types of interventions that we are looking to actually put in the ground. So I won't go through those other benefits there at the moment, but we'll just kind of actually go to the dashboard. So dashboard here. So what we do, so what we have is, so we have a little summary on the left-hand side. We kind of pull out the three big benefits, just to kind of actually be the big kind of actually smack you in the face type kind of thing on that. We've got the post-confidence benefit value and the number of benefits that we've actually assessed on that. In the middle, we've got this kind of graph that is telling us the solid bar is the post-confidence, and that full bar going across is the pre-confidence value. So you can get a sense of scale in terms of the impact the confidence values had on the actual overall benefits that you're actually seeing. The total benefit in the top right hand side just gives you that sense in terms of the post-confidence benefit is the darker green side, and the pre-confidence is the one on the outside. We've also then got a bit of a table as well, which actually summarizes the benefit values against the capitals here, for example. And then if we scroll down, a key part of the tool previously was the sensitivity analysis as well, because this is a slight uncertain science. So having the sensitivity is actually quite important. And previously, you had to click through on every single cell and actually change the sensitivity, which probably meant not many people actually did it because it was a little bit laborious. So the tool now automatically does that, and you can kind of actually see where the central previous estimate, which is the solid bar, and then you can see the low sensitivity and the high sensitivity through the kind of the whiskers approach. And then when you scroll down further, you get all the benefit values appear. Now, what's then is really helpful is you can download the shapefile. So all the data that is attached to that benefit is then put into a shapefile. So then you can use that externally again. You can also download it as a CSV. So you can kind of get your data out in a raw format, and you can also create a PDF. And so when you download the PDF, it kind of actually goes away, goes on a bit of a journey, and then it creates your kind of summary, which is actually here. So if you want to have as an output, which you then want to be able to append in terms of actually reports to actually share to kind of give the overview, you then actually get a PDF version of your dashboard as well. So this will test my ability to move to the right page. So that kind of gives a bit of an overview in terms of how to use the tool. Hopefully, it's quite a simple process to step through and identify and kind of actually create your projects, and then actually assess the benefits with the supporting information all in one place. So that's an overview of the tool. So this is where I now become Ian, and I'm going to talk about a project which has used ciriabest to actually understand the value of some of the multiple benefits that a project would look to actually create in that. So I'm going to switch back to the slides. Hopefully these slides are still sharing. Sure, Louise is going to tell me if that's the case. And we'll just actually kind of flick through there. So, yeah, great stuff. So I'm now going to talk around a blue-green plan for Hull and Halton Price. This is a plan which has come out from Living with Water. Living with Water is a partnership of 5 organisations. You've got Hull City Council, East Riding of Yorkshire Council. You have the Environment Agency, Yorkshire Water, and the University of Hull. And it's a partnership which is started to actually retrofit blue-green infrastructure to manage flood risk. But what I'm going to share today is actually looking to the future, and a plan that we at Stantec actually helped working with Living with Water. So I'm going to share a little bit about this kind of actually plan and how we kind of created it, but also importantly, how estimating the benefits really helped actually demonstrate the value of the plan and where we felt that could actually go. So, talk about kind of how we collaboratively developed this 25-year plan, and share 5 key elements that underpinned it really. And some key highlights is that this plan, if we're able to fully implement it, would radically help us actually create flood resilience in Hull and Halton Cross. It would quite significantly shift the landscape, the character of certain streets and areas. And to do that, we've been looking at both what's happening in water, but things actually outside of water and connected to water, which has been really important to create this cost beneficial plan. So I'll set the scene a little bit though. 2007, when we renovated our house and we opened the roof up, 2 days later, quite a significant storm event happened. So very personally, I can say the impact that actually caused coming through the house. Playing catch rainfall is never a great game in your own house, but a lot of people were really, truly impacted. And there was sadly in Hull loss of life as well. Thousands of properties were affected by the floods, and it caused real kind of actually devastation. And anyone who knows Hull, which is in the eastern part of the country, it sits in a bowl. Water drains from the outside. A lot of the water drains through a lot of the sewers, so even a lot of water courses. There's kind of actually 3 main water courses which stay as water courses. The rest actually come into the sewers, and that has to move through, and therefore it's very reliant on pumping to actually manage the water levels. And of course, when you have a really big catastrophic event, this was an event kind of labelled 1 in 150 return period, so very kind of infrequent what we might expect. The water has to go somewhere. So a key element around Living with Water, though, and the partnership was set up in 2017, and I think this is quite a good example to actually also kind of help actually understand how evaluating the benefits and who benefits, who are the beneficiaries, is really, really important. So there's something called setting dike in Hull, and what's on the screen here essentially shows how ownership moves from one organisation to another, which kind of makes it a little bit hard if you're trying to attribute who is actually responsible for certain things. And so really to do that, you do need to actually have partnership working. And I think actually generally we are seeing a massive shift of partnership working across the UK, whether that's with in the northwest with some work that's going on, say with GMCA or with in the Oxcam kind of actually, but there's lots of partnerships really actually being formed. And that's really important because if we want to really understand benefits and who are the beneficiaries, we tend to find there's pots of money to different organisations, and it's being able to actually work out how we can kind of really access them. And that's by assessing the benefits, and they're not always water benefits that we want to be able to actually access. That then actually makes, I think, the ciriabest tool really powerful because we can actually start to place some values on that. Now, part of Living with Water is to reduce flood risk. That's obviously a key fundamental reason why that was actually set up. But it's also about actually how working with people, we can build community resilience. It's not just around what big stuff that we put in, it's actually how we actually work with communities as well. But we can also be an improved place. improve place by the types of interventions that we put in, the interventions that we encourage. But we can also enhance the economy. And I think in enhancing the economy is a really important aspect, because that actually then allows you to actually access other funds to then actually invest. But also, and actually Living Water, once they heard the opportunity kind of came up yesterday, we're really keen and very happy to actually share this project out today, because this is about sharing knowledge and us all learning from each other. What's also really important is to have a vision for the future. So a key element for the Blue-Green Plan was to help shape what's our vision, and then some real underpinning pillars. So vision around kind of effective placemaking and embedding managed change. And managed change, we mean, because actually we can either let change happen in a kind of really ad hoc way, or we can start to think about how we plan for a change over time, with both public and private partnerships. But if you look at these pillars here, one's around good placemaking, one's around being smart and connected, so how digital it, for example, mobility. So the choices that we make around mobility has a massive impact on our choices that we make around water, because we might need to have space to do that. Therefore, what happens with mobility is really important. So this is why the whole partnership was looking beyond water as well as what's happening within water. The work was really a collaboration of people working together. And there was a few more steps to this. But in summary, we looked to really actually understand what the current problem was. And that's not just in terms of water, that's maybe in terms of the number of trees there are, the kind of the amount of open green space, the proximity of properties to green space. Understanding that baseline position when we're assessing that all those benefits become really, really important. But we then had a charrette, posh workshop, to collaboratively work with 50 or 60 people at a time. And this wasn't COVID, so it was online. Interesting experience as well. But virtually work together to start to kind of actually shape strategies that we want to test them, come back and enhance them in a follow-on charrette, and then develop and shape the plan and have lots of wider stakeholder discussions. Talking to the youth parliament, quite an interesting conversation to have, conversation with local councillors, to understand and actually share where the plan is actually going. And again, that's really important, because if we want people to kind of take on and suggest we have these benefits, we need to have those discussions rather than have a big ta-da moment at the end of it. Now, as part of the plan, we created this connected strategy, which is layered. So smart sits on the top of it all, because we need to actually understand change. We need to be able to inform people. We need to, for example, know how transportation and mobility is changing, evolving. And you need to have that, because that then influences your choices further down the line, how you control the drainage system to maximize the benefit. We have some grey infrastructure, and the whole thing around ciriabest is it's around what are the outcomes, what does the scheme achieve? Therefore, we focus on blue-green infrastructure because you kind of need that to create the multiple benefits, but there's always going to be a little bit of growth. We have this managed change where we actually understand what needs to change over time, what will happen with development and regeneration. We have source control as a key element to start to hold the flow, slow the flow down. But that has to connect to blue-green corridors. Like in most places, we can't source control our way out of everything. And if we want to remove surface water and not treat it, again, another benefit that ciriabest can actually help us actually understand, we've got to be able to remove out. But underpinning all of this was the people and culture side. And that people and culture side, in terms of how we work with people now and going forward, fundamental to actually delivering the plan. So key thing around the plan was not coming up with what we typically have always done. So looking to change our urban highways and really kind of think around, well, what might be the mobility choices in the future, and actually how can we create blue-green channels to actually take water through a city that typically 50, 60 years ago, just post-war, actually had big open channels, but they're also open sewers, so they kind of got filled in at the time. It's kind of going back to some different ways of actually working, but then also slow the flow everywhere. So on a street like this, actually, what can we use? We could use turn walls into planters to store water and slowly release it, maybe to the highway, which then conveys it towards our blue-green channel. So quite a kind of philosophical shift in terms of how we want to actually work. But if you take the street on the right, what other benefits would you then kind of get from actually undertaking that kind of approach to the residents? Again, which might be a mobility aspect as well. When we have autonomous vehicles, we might have more space on the highway to then enable us to actually adapt and install interventions. Hence, being able to go 2035, we might have a different set of interventions compared to what I'm doing in 2025. Really important. But also recognise we have to be really adaptive. So we might plan to do something outside this Royal Mail depot. Nothing's confirmed with them. But plan to actually do what we want to do, but also recognise that we might need to change, and change when opportunities come up in terms of time. Timing of when opportunities arise is a fundamental aspect for actually this whole plan. So if this site on the right-hand side, which was a council depot, and there's going to be kind of actually work in the area, could we actually change actually how the water is managed on the site at that time? And obviously having a tool that allows you to keep on changing and flexing the dates of when stuff happens, but allows you to kind of see how benefit values might change over time as well. So now I've took, I don't know, about 10 minutes to talk about. I could have explained it in 30 seconds. The plan is to significantly reduce flood risk to properties in 2018. In 2018, in terms of we're thinking about climate change impacts on rainfall as well. The multi-beneficial value of the plan is £2.6 billion worth of potential benefits at a cost of 1.3 billion. And it's carbon neutral. Now that's quite a powerful plan, I think, in terms of actually what impact that would have. Of course, it doesn't mean that you have £1.3 billion in the back pocket, but it starts to lay out the foundations for how you can actually move through that. So considering we are talking about benefits, we'll just zoom in a little bit more around benefits. So I said 2.6 billion. The 5 core benefits were around, obviously, as you might hope, flood resilience, reducing flood risk. But we also saw impact in terms of potential for GVA, that kind of growth. That's a really important economic metric for us to actually include. Amenity value. Now, it's always worth highlighting that you have some choices within ciriabest. Do you look at amenity, health, recreation? Sometimes got to be very careful with double count. So here, let's look at more at the amenity value and the health value, and I think some of the air quality values as well. And of that distribution, the pie chart gives us that kind of size of the capital distributions. And so you can see the biggest impact was around the social capital. And that's really important, isn't it? Because us being able to start to actually understand and articulate how our plans and what we are thinking about investing in, and actually how we find investable propositions, we need to be able to actually understand this kind of breakdown of the benefits. Now, all those other benefits, we won't play match symbol to benefit, but all those other benefits on the bottom were also part of the evaluation. So whether that was around traffic calming or noise or education or carbon sequestration, large number of other benefits we actually evaluated. So just to kind of wrap up on the blue-green plan. Ultimately, if we look to implement it, we'll, through aligning opportunities, that co-delivery across partner organisations and co-investment, that will allow us to kind of actually make a real step change, both in the short term, so maybe over from 2025 to 2030, but over about the longer term period as well, if we go to 2040 and 2050, to actually help achieve a far more flood resilient city and urban area. So that's an overview of a little bit around living with water as a partnership, but also the blue-green plan. But why us being able to evaluate the benefits in a structured manner, in a way that allows us to actually work through it and have all the evidence recorded and all our decisions recorded, and that's still exactly the same in the ciriabest version now that we actually have. It's easy for us to go back and actually see what we've actually done and create summaries. So I think that takes us to the end of the slides at the moment. So I think we're going to have some interactive discussion, I believe.
Thank you, Chris. And we'll see what questions we have. Do we have any questions lined up from the online?
Bruce Thornton is doing a very good job and is answering a lot of the questions for us. There's a lot of them are coming in asking about the data behind the tool.
Yeah.
How the social benefits are evaluated, whether the sources are peer reviewed, which of course they all are, whether the monetary values coming from. So Bruce has answered that and saying multiple sources like academic papers, grey literature, and all referenced in the tool and guidance.
And Louise, if I can add to that, firstly, it's a big shout out to Bruce, who's not with us today. Sorry, that sounds quite morbid, but Bruce has been absolutely fundamental again in kind of creating the tool as the key economist, environmental economist that actually sits behind it. And Bruce is I don't know whether he's commented, we have looked at hundreds of evidence sources, which we right from the outset look to come up with principles in terms of how we would consider whether we could use those values in such a tool. So was it a study which included 5 people, or was it something where we felt had a bit more robust evidence that would allow us to kind of go, we can actually use that. But as Bruce has mentioned, it's in the guidance, and the key thing in the guidance is we try and give a little bit of context in terms of what that is. So you can kind of look to relate your context to what's in the guidance. And that's why that confidence value then actually becomes quite important as well. We're not saying actually it wouldn't be about value. And values have changed even probably through COVID, but it allows you to kind of actually see some kind of actually real differences. And let's not be too overly optimistic.
This might be a moment in time to get questions from the audience in a room. Any questions from Chris and Louise? Any question on how to use the tool? Adrian.
Can you create polygons on top of existing polygons to zoom in and get a little bit of a more focused information on part of your existing projects?
Absolutely, yeah. So we could, if you really want to, you can have street by street, house by house. It depends how much time you have on your hands, but you really could street by street. And actually, it's a really good point, Adrian, actually, because you might be looking at different interventions, street by street or streets by streets. So you might have 4 or 5 terrace streets together, and then maybe move to more of a set of detached kind of actually housing estate kind of actually next to that, and the space that you have would mean that we might look at different interventions. Those different interventions might then lead to different benefits. So we can go to really granular level, and that's where it's quite important for the user to have that judgment in terms of proportionate to, have I got a £5,000 scheme? Therefore, it might be a bit kind of actually high level. Is it a 50,000, a 500,000, a 5 million, a 1.3 billion scheme? You know, what it's really kind of suitable and flexible as long as we are in our own minds to actually apply it to actually whatever we kind of needed to be done.
So is there a facility in the tool to actually compare business cases depending on the intervention that we would like to choose? So, because I can imagine communities might have different views or opposing camps on which intervention to pick. So could you give them those two cases using this tool?
Well, I mean, I suppose if asked, I mean that's quite an interesting comment, Doug. You could certainly kind of, well, got to be a little bit careful here that we don't kind of get down to micro, you know, kind of actually one tree on that street.
One street.
You know, is a little bit different to actually having a collection of trees. But in terms of how it sort of works, you could kind of go, look, actually, if we went with this kind of plan, this is the impact, or this approach, this is the impact. When we get into, you know, we have these kind of community discussions, but a key challenge is actually often understood that there are often actually camps, it is pluralized at times, and being able to work through with people to go, well, here's some maybe choices rather than here's carte blanche, because otherwise people might want to have X, Y, Z, but actually if water needs to flow downhill, water still needs to flow downhill. And so there's kind of palettes that we might kind of offer people in terms of planting choices, which may not overall massively affect some of the values that we actually create, because it's the outcome that we're looking at. But you kind of go, well, if I'm just going to put a grey channel down the side of the street, because you don't want to lose any parking at the minute, and parking is a really kind of, you know, very emotive subject. Your value is close to zero, whereas if you go down a green planted up, say, side of the street, your value might be this. So we can start to articulate that.
And that's the beauty of the tool, isn't it? That it articulates those benefits in layman's terms, most probably as well, that you can explain it to an audience, a community that actually is going to benefit from it.
Absolutely. And because you can copy projects as well, it'd be very easy to go, if you take the street, actually, example, this street, that's the value, this same street, different approach, that's the value, and just click between the dashboards and do the PDF outputs and be able to see that actually really quickly.
Any more questions from the audience?
Yeah. So our
Is it a
friend-
long question? Is that what you come to show?
thought I'd move about.
Thank you.
Our friend and colleague Richard Ashley, Professor Ashley, who put a lot of effort and expertise into the tool as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
So he's asking, is the scenario planning element included? And is the literature review available online, the latest?
Yeah, so answering both those things, you know, and again, so Richard's company Eco Futures was really helpful when we really started up, and we were looking at an awful lot of information again, actually shaping how we do this. So in the old in the Excel version of the tool, we had something which was a scenario planning to allow us to kind of actually do some kind of more fundamental changes and actually think around almost what ifs. So that hasn't been transposed yet into the tool. But that would be one of the things that we would see as a kind of one aspects to actually consider as a follow-on piece to actually then bring back in the tool to actually allow that kind of more scenario planning. Sorry, there was a second question as well, wasn't there? The literature review. The updated literature is in the guidance. I don't think we've released or summarised yet as in a literature review document, but we've got all the refs, so that's something that we could talk about, either kind of putting online here.
Yeah.
But it'd probably be remiss of me to also not say, because if Bruce was here, he'd be saying it's one of the slides that we had, which showed some of the different evidence sources which are around, is also publishing a lot of evidence that we believe is actually good quality on.
Question for the audience?
Oh, yeah.
Hi, my name is Mariana. I want to ask you if when the tool does the evaluation, does it take into account elements in a domestic level? For example, grey water use from a single plant, or without elements in this scale, or it includes mainly trees, rain gardens that can be applied in large scale?
Yeah. So yeah, really good question. So there is a rainwater harvesting which was in the Excel version. So we have that function in this one. It's really how you apply it. You could draw could do it for one property and one benefit boundary for one property if you wanted, or grouping them together if you have similar levels of rainwater harvesting. So what I'd probably say is that if you only had one industrial property, for example, like a supermarket, and that was within your overall benefit area, you then might actually adjust it to actually just deal with that one. So you could go down to the single use if you wish to. Obviously, if we have developments, and there are developments kind of which have gone in more recent years where we have rainwater harvesting in different shapes and forms. So maybe it's kind of with a third pipe coming back as well. So there's different formats for that. You can then look at it as a whole. There'll always be a lot of uncertainty, won't there, around say rainwater harvesting, and again, but you can use that confidence factor to actually help you consider overall what do I think it is. So you might have hundreds of properties, but you might kind of go, well, 50% of them might still be using or not.
Hi, so I'm Valentina and I work for Metis Consultants. I had two questions that are not really related to each other. One is about the polygons, or when we define an area. Does that polygon inform anything when it comes to actually the calculations and tables, or is it just for reference? And my second question is more about sharing the results from the BEST tool. Because, for example, when we submit a business case, we often attach the BEST tool, and it tends to be reviewed quite in detail in terms of what we inputted in the table. So, is there a way to share that, and does that kind of print out that gets saved from the online tool as all that detail about what data was inputted into each table, and is there somewhere where you can put an explanation and things like that?
Yeah, so your first question was, since COVID, my memory is awful.
About the polygons.
Polygons, yeah. So thank you. So with the benefit polygons, when you then do the benefit assessments, they get attached to that kind of benefit polygon. So then when you download your CSV, everything is attached to that benefit polygon. So that and that's quite key, particularly if you have a lot of benefit polygons, or you want to export the shape files to have all the data that you actually have attached to that. Regarding the second one around all the input information that you have in, sorry, can you record, does that spell out all the input information as well?
It's something that gives you the summary of what the actual outputs are. It doesn't give you, say the number of properties and things like that. It's an overview of what the sort of calculate values are. But in terms of giving other people access, as Chris showed at the beginning, you can share the project with other people. So you can give access to somebody else who can go and actually drill down into all the detail and see every single value you put in.
Yeah.
Okay, and do they need to have an account or a license, or is it something that?
So they would at minute need to have an account or license. But also that's one of the things that we can look to actually build in a follow-on version. And and obviously that's the beauty of it being online, is as we look to do further updates, so in a future state, we can then actually look to have all the inputs come up with all the outputs as well. But the sharing function we see as being quite kind of key to be able to, so people can drill in and actually see what numbers are there if they really want to actually get into that kind of micro detail now. So we got any more online question?
Yeah, so Rachel Ray, hi Rachel.
Rachel?
This has the potential to capture lots of data. I'm wondering whether this is being thought about going forward. So I'm wondering, I'm not quite sure if I understand what she's meaning, but the tool itself doesn't hold all the data, does it? Online.
No, so all the data that you enter is just associated with that project. Obviously, kind of going forward, maybe a few years. I mean, it all depends on, I suppose. You could see in a kind of a wonderful world where you create a project, it kind of gets shared, everyone can see it, everyone knows there's maybe benefits, and different organisations. So if they start to do kind of different assessments, can actually see these things actually happening. So you have some visibility of these things. Because one of the things, I mean, I'm fortunate enough to work in an awful lot of kind of partnerships and kind of actually reviewing things. And actually, one of my observations is, we have an awful lot of strategies and plans, and those strategies and plans often talk about significant benefits that come from. But if you kind of put them all together side by side, you might add them up to be, if you had 7 of those plans, they might come to the top number of benefits might be 7. But if you actually looked at those plans, you might find they're so overlapping, the benefits are actually more like 2.5. And we haven't really been given enough thought to actually we kind of double and treble count benefits when you start to kind of bring them together. So it would be lovely to be in a world where people can start to see, oh, someone else has done an assessment there, or someone else has done an assessment there. Should we be actually bringing that together? But that's far more wider industry, I think, discussion. And also, it's kind of client discussions and kind of actually what we're prepared to actually share, put out there. It might be that if it's local authority driven, there will be a requirement at some point, but that might be in a certain controlled manner as well.
Just one final thing that might require going back into the tool. Somebody has said that they can't access the how-to guide. I just wonder if you could demonstrate that again.
Okay. Right. So, well, you should be able to just click on the how-to guide, and that then actually kind of gives you these kind of different kind of actually key, I suppose, kind of areas. So if we look at selecting opportunity benefits, you just click on that kind of row, and then it just kind of opens up, and you've got kind of a kind of bullet point prompt, and you can kind of see, without me touching the screen, we've got that kind of recorded image of numbers being entered and drop down to that kind of actually GIF kind of actually format. But then you should be able to just move again to another part, and it opens up. If I have particular problems, if they can maybe just kind of actually drop us a note, Louise, and I think you'll be wrapping up a moment about kind of feedback in a moment anyway, just in case there's different operating systems that are misbehaving in a certain way. From experience of doing these things, you can never have 99.999% foolproof, even though I'm told it's possible. It's always a challenge.
Fine with a different web browser, do you think, if it's not?
Potentially, particularly, I mean, Dan, I don't know if you've got any comments on that, but
yeah, Internet Explorer is not going to work. Obviously, Chrome, Firefox, OS, it all should work fine.
Yeah.
Have you got any more questions?
I think we covered all the one, oh wait, a minute, I think there might have been one more.
There's another one just come in.
Yes, there are. Do you anticipate conservation or community groups or schools utilising this tool to pose improvements to councils and authorities?
Good question.
Potentially, yes. No. And maybe this is a discussion because when you move something from being completely free for use to then actually how people then actually start to use it, that represents maybe a slightly different challenge. But that's one for maybe kind of consideration how educational establishments or whatever they might actually be able to kind of get access to certain things at certain times and that. So that's maybe one for us to think about actually kind of going forward as well, because if it's quite easy to use, you want to maximise the chance for people to actually use that.
Brilliant. I think that.
Are there any questions in the audience? Last chance, Lydia?
Maybe if I see RSSB. How do you see this tool being developed going forward? For example, you mentioned about scenario planning.
Yeah.
Are there other things that you can see that you add to what's currently being developed?
Absolutely. I think a really good example is, kind of almost it's already kind of actually clear. But one of the next things that we would want to do is to kind of actually bring in other data layers. So a minute within the map, you can kind of actually see the aerial. You can see a kind of a topographic and plain map. But there's a load of other data layers that we would like to actually bring in, and we can do that. It's just not currently actually put in there. So. That's an example of, there are a lot of open source data layers that people can then actually use to actually help inform and actually kind of make judgments. So I think, to me, that's probably one of the key steps forward. There's always been a desire, going back 11 years, that you draw a polygon and it tells you what the number is. We've always kind of resisted that kind of development type thing because the context being so important to actually what to do. So I'm not sure that kind of thing will actually come in. But the scenario planning, there could be other aspects around further ways to do kind of comparison between projects. So select this project, this project, and then get a summary comparison as well. So I think that kind of thing would also be quite useful as well. We've already kind of touched on that input data stuff as well. So again, that's just spitting that out in ways. And I think one of the key things that will be really important is when we kind of receive feedback from what people are kind of asking for and kind of actually saying from using it, we can have a plan to kind of then actually develop a journey and actually take that on board and actually work out when we might actually do X, Y, Z. But it's not instant response, but we can then start to actually put that in the plan to kind of update stuff. The other thing which we're conscious of is that we always need to keep an eye on the evidence, and that's something that we do a Stantec anyway. As part as we kind of actually get to see actually stuff come in, but being able to kind of go, how does it fit against our principles? Is it something that we need to then either have a new benefit come in, we could foresee some new benefit categories coming in, and also some kind of sub benefits come in as we get better evidence, new studies. And so certainly refreshing some of the evidence that we have as new studies come in is a really important part of this.
And adding case studies, actually practical.
Yes, so people can see that in the same way, which couldn't there be a real great TikTok video to kind of show actually how the tool and the results are. So,
Are you volunteering?
I'm not the greatest TikToker, but there's always a first, isn't there?
Did I see one more?
There is one.
Two more questions, and then we'll wrap up with.
Yeah, Bruce again has come in on one which was asking what are the weaker areas of evidence, and Bruce is saying it's continual improvement, but the ones that he's highlighted would be social impacts, biodiversity, to climate resilient, such as urban heat and drought risk.
Yeah, and actually urban heat is one which we've talked about how we can bring that in a way that actually people can actually do the evaluation as well, because typically you need kind of actually more kind of extensive studies to do that, and it wasn't something we kind of wanted to just kind of actually throw in there. And the biodiversity one is quite an interesting one, because the monetary values attached to biodiversity and ecology are not necessarily massive from the current evidence.
No, but may change again.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
And then the last one I've got on the list is from Rachel again about societal benefits. And if the scope for them to be quantitative, once more data are available, things like health, physical and mental, days of work lost, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so yeah, that's what kind of days of work lost could be one aspect. There is quite a lot under health which would link to the social side already, in terms of some of the valuations that are actually out there around actually the having blue-green infrastructure, the impact that has on you, and being valued. And if we look back at some of the studies, it might actually almost be so, because some of them are proxies for other things than that. So that's why kind of when you delve into the evidence, we often kind of also see how some benefits have been measured or tried to be actually understood, often cover off more than one kind of benefit area as well. So it's always coming back to detail. That's fine.
Right. Thank you, Dirk.
Just want to wrap up with the
Yeah.
final sort of guidance on how to use it.
Yeah, just a few closing remarks. So as I said, just search www.ciria.best. You get to the landing page of the tool. When you log in, you'll be taken back to Ciria. That'll ask you to create an account. That will give you free access to ciriabest for a month, in order to be able to try before you buy, hopefully. And if you start creating projects and polygons and putting information in there, it will be saved. So even if you need to sort of go away and make the case to buy it, come back in a few months, your work will still be there. So it's not lost. I suppose in return, we'd really like feedback on how what you feel about the tool, any ideas as we've had today, anything else, any problems, of course. On the 27th of May, access will be switched off, and we will implement payment for the tool, which will help us with this further development going forward. You can use this email to register your interest if you like, best@ciria.org, or just tell one of us today and we can take your email. We've got a sheet to do that. Just drop an email, and we really look forward to hearing about case studies that have been assisted using the tool. And thanks ever so much for joining. Tam, you've got something to
Just
say.
a quick one on that. Whilst it will be shut down on the 27th, to avoid a break in your subscription, if you want to pay before that, then that's absolutely fine. So you don't get that break over that bank holiday weekend. So you haven't got to come into the office on the Tuesday and say, oh, crikey, I need to pay that account. So we will be taking payment manually throughout the next 4 weeks.
Okay, well, thanks very much,
All right.
Louise, for
Thank you.
Guiding us through that. And thank you to Chris for demonstrating actually how practical the tool is, how easy it is to navigate, and how it will benefit the cause. Our cause at the end of the day is to further and improve sustainable water management in the broader sense. We've covered quite a few benefits, I think, just gliding you through the use of the tool. But at the end of the day, the proof will be in the pudding. So we do welcome your use of it. Give us your feedback, But also from today, give us your feedback, talk to the Ciria team. We're here to talk to you and to hear your views on it. And thank you to everyone who's joined us online. Thank you for quite a few questions which were really on the money and helped us further develop our thinking. And we will circulate the presentations that we gave you this morning, this afternoon. And if we haven't covered all your questions, if you're still thinking about how to use it, if you're not sure about how to use the tool, then just drop us a line and you've got the email address to use. So thank you everyone online, and for those who are staying, join us for some networking and don't forget to use the tool. Thank you everyone.